an actual instance of cultural misogyny that I can actually talk about. And so I'm going to. Hey everybody, it's Prince of Queens, and last night I had a really good night. I am needing money, as people know, and one of the things I realized that I could do would be to sell some of my records. And I have a pretty hefty vinyl collection of drum and bass, house, techno, electro that I collected from 1998 to, I guess, early this decade, now that I really think about it. And the thing is, I really, really like a lot of these records. I don't like a lot of them. I could get rid of a lot of them. But most of all, I don't play them anymore. I don't DJ. I'm not interested in DJing for the time being. I don't know, maybe in a few years. Maybe if there was somehow a cool nightlife and music scene that didn't have anything to do with SJWs and feminists coming around and telling people how to have fun, or just making it so that nobody has fun, including each other, because they hate each other, then maybe I would DJ again. But you know, I don't do that right now. But I do have this friend who is local and who is a cool guy. I've hung out with a few times ever since my channel, because he actually shares a lot of the frustrations with the types of people in the city. Even though he actually still is friends with a lot of them and hangs out with them, he'll talk smack about them behind their backs. I wouldn't say he's exactly red-pilled, but he's certainly purple-pilled, at least. And he's a gay guy, and he had mentioned that he actually likes drum and bass, which is extraordinarily rare for gay guys. Most gay guys are scared of it or something. Like, I don't know. But I always really liked it personally. I thought it was very fascinating, and so I became a drum and bass DJ and was obsessed with it. And so I realized that he would be a good person to sell my records to. And it was really fun because he didn't just go through the drum and bass ones, because they're all mixed together pretty thoroughly at this point because they've moved around a lot. So, there would be patches of house, techno, electro that would sort of go in there. And there was this one record that we listened to that he really wanted, and I actually didn't want to let go of. It was this amazing house track from the 1990s, and it was vocal disco house, basically. We were talking about it, and the conclusion that we came to in terms of what it actually sounds like, it sounds like it would be the song that they would play when the credits roll at the end of Queer as Folk. Like, do you guys remember that show, Queer as Folk? It was on Showtime in the 2000s. It wasn't a very good show, but we watched it because it was like a gay Melrose Place or something, and it was entertaining. So the thing about it was, there was a lot of this 90s pride house music, and the track in particular was a really, really good one that I remember playing on the night that Proposition 8 was overturned in the Supreme Court, giving gay people the right to vote in terms of Supreme Court precedent, which was huge to the gay community and to me at the time. I didn't care about gay marriage, but at the same time, if anything, I was really, really happy that gay guys were going to be happy and maybe shut up about gay marriage. Little did I know that gay marriage being passed would just signify the end of gay guys having any involvement in politics aside from being allies to trans people and women, because that's what gay guys are supposed to be now. So looking back on it, it's almost a little bit bittersweet to think about how much fun I had DJing that night, because it was this cool place in San Francisco. It's called The Lookout, and you are on the second floor of this great intersection, and it's normally not that much fun, but it's a really, really great bar if you actually go to it. It's just the crowd there is usually not that good, but it was good that night. So we went until they had to shut off the sound system. And the song that I am talking about in particular, that I ended up selling to my friend, it has this chorus it's a guy singing, and he's all like, "Times are changing, times are changing for the better, for the better. Times are changing for the time. Times are changing." Sorry, I haven't been singing that much recently. I'm not that good. So It was a great track. And I was thinking about it, and I remember where I got that track. Because it was a 90s track, and I never really collected 90s house. You know, like, I don't know when it came out. It could have come out 1994, 1995, 1996. Who knows? And I didn't collect that music at the time at all. And so when I was about probably 28, 29, there was a record store that was in San Francisco that was right by my house. Like, I could throw a rock to it if there were no buildings. And it was these two older gay men, one of them probably in his early 40s and one of them in his 50s or so, and they were husbands. And they decided that they were going to close their record store. I think they both had full-grown adult men jobby jobs. You know, maybe one of them was a nurse, maybe one of them was a lawyer, who knows. And the record store was taking up a lot of money. And they had this amazing back catalog of music that I really took to, because I started listening to it, and I was telling them, like, hey, you guys know that house, like 90s house, fun disco 90s house, that's going to come back in style. And they're like, really? Because I don't hear it right now, because it wasn't popular then. It was probably 2010 or so. And so I was telling them that, and they were really happy to hear that. And so they were like smoking blunts with me, so I would get stoned and buy more records, and it worked. And the great thing about it was they were giving me really good discounts, because they were just trying to get rid of as many records as possible. So they'd be like, I'll give you 3 of those for $10. How about that? And I was like, sweet. These like great vintage vinyls. They're definitely worth a lot more. My friend looked up the one track in particular, and people sell it for $12 to $20 now, depending upon the condition. So it actually grew in value over the years. So I ended up with all these records, and it was really cool for me to have them and to think about, this was a little piece of gay history, because straight DJs didn't play so many house tracks like that. Now, there are plenty of straight DJs, a lot of them, but those are the kind of gay tracks, and house music was invented by gay guys. And so it's valuable to me to remember that aspect about it. Like, house music is gonna have some gay crap in it. And the best DJs of house music are the DJs who aren't afraid to play the totally gay sounding songs. And so we were having a conversation about that. And then I started thinking about female vocals, because the track that we were talking about was a male vocal track. And my friend had said during another record that I had played that he didn't like the female diva vocals. And it was in a drum and bass track that's actually not disco housey at all. It was in a really hard drum and bass track that he actually ended up buying just because it's so good. But it does have this kind of cheesy female vocal that it's annoying. It's annoying, and I wish it wasn't there, to be perfectly honest. But you can kind of get past it because it's only in it for a small amount of the record. Like, it's in less than 10% of the record. So you ignore that and then just get into the other part. And he was saying, oh, I don't like female vocals, blah, blah, blah. And then I realized that's because you're a Seattle person. That is a Seattle distinct thing, because for whatever reason, Seattle straight guy DJs in particular have it's like an unspoken rule that you do not play music with female vocals, like electronic music. You don't play electronic music with female vocals unless it's a very, very particular track, like if it's a remix of somebody that they really, really love or something like that. They are very culturally averse to hearing the female vocals. And I remembered that was something that at one point in my life I actually did think was misogynistic. Now, I'm not so sure about it at this point, but I do exactly want to explain what I was thinking and how it's funny that you really, really have to come up, if you're a logical person and you have a cultural sense of how people actually behave and you're willing to be reasonable and be lenient, but then also really, really, really think about what is actually something that is maybe a subconscious or unconscious or primitive distaste of females. If you actually start thinking in those terms, which I guess I was forced to before I became, an MRA, before I was not actively critical of feminism, because, I was around feminists. I didn't really like them, but thought I was mostly in agreement with them just because I didn't really know what they actually believed. So, since I was sort of forced to be in that mindset, eventually at some point or another, I did have these moments of realizations about things that I kind of felt were misogynist. But if looking back on it, they're so small, they're so incredibly minor. But I really want to at least explain what I was thinking. So it was that I had a feeling that there was this kind of like DJ bro culture in Seattle that is definitely there. Like, anyone who has been in the electronic music nightlife scene in Seattle can totally pick these things out about the straight guys who are the DJs. They're not fun. They kind of like, I don't want to say snobby is the best word, but they have this really authoritarian code for what is good music, who gets to DJ, what types of sets they're looking for, and that kind of a thing. And certain DJs get shafted for bizarre reasons. Like, they're really talented, but for some reason somebody important in the scene has a problem with them, or not even necessarily like a personal problem, but somebody important in the scene has stated numerous times publicly that they don't like that type of music. And so even though the crowd likes that type of music, those people never get bookings. And there's some really, really good DJs who just don't really get that many bookings or that much respect. Like, there was this amazingly good female DJ who, she did tour and everything, but she was one of the best 3 to 5 DJs in Seattle. And I don't just mean that she was good at picking songs, which she mostly was. Sometimes I didn't like her music, but she was really technically talented. Like, she really knew how to use 2 turntables, vinyl records, and mix them together and make it lively, like throwing in new songs all the time. I think she even scratched a little bit. She was badass. I'll just say her name. Her name was Naha, and she was really, really good. But it was funny the way that, although she did get bookings and everything, I still think that people thought of her as a female DJ, and she didn't have that whole amount of respect in the way that the guys did. And I think it's because she didn't play a lot of the weird games that you're supposed to play. Like, they had all these... there's too many kind of unspoken rules. Like, maybe, for example, you're not supposed to play 2 tracks by the same producer in a row or something like that, even though they're electronic music tracks, and so it's not like you can hear any vocals. Just little things like that. And maybe she didn't care about those rules as much. I don't know. Or maybe it was just because she was a woman. But either way, there was this aversion to female vocals. They thought that female vocals were weird. And they just didn't play them. And I don't know if it was because they seemed too gay, or I don't know if it's because of the city's history with music. And that's the thing I want to bring up now. I might have been wrong. I might have been grasping for straws, trying to search for an actual moment of misogyny because of the fact that I felt obligated to. Like, I wanted to believe that misogyny was the thing, so I was, like, searching for it, and then I'm like, I know, they don't play music with female vocals. That's it. There's misogyny. It's real. There is a real thing that I can see. But then I realized, I thought about it more, and I'm like, wait, maybe that's because the vocals from females that are in electronic music tend to be pretty vocals. Vocals from women who are technically talented singers. Women who have probably had a little bit of training and everything. There was never anybody in the Seattle music scene that was like that. That was a woman that got particularly popular that I know of. If you think about the Seattle music scene, it's also correlated to the Olympia, Washington music scene. So that's where, like, Nirvana and Hole and the bands that are considered more cool to Seattle people that had females in it, that were early bands that have shaped the culture here, like Bikini Kill and Le Tigre, which actually has some really, really great songs. If you want to look up Le Tigre, spelled Tir, Tigre. It's called Decepticon. It's a good song. It's a timeless song. Fun, kind of like punk party song. And all the vocals from women were horribly low skill tier vocals, but they managed to work in a lot of the songs. Now, granted, if you played too many in a row, it was just annoying. It just sounded like they were, I don't know, screaming, crying, like, and then it was like, oh, shut up. You know, kind of like that band X-Ray Specs, who had some good songs, but ultimately, I think that style of female vocals ended up being considered the only thing that was cool in Seattle, because there wasn't that many female bands, or bands with female singers at least. But then there were a whole bunch of male singers that kept being popular in Seattle, including bands like, what's the band? God, Death Cab for Cutie, where the guy actually is a very talented singer, technically. Like, he actually really knows how to sing well. You know, and then there's bands like Modest Mouse, where the guy is not a technical good singer, but he can hit a note, and he has a distinctive quality about his voice, and I like it. So now I'm thinking, you know, maybe it had a little bit more to do with that. Maybe it's just because Seattle people have this collective unconscious of music that they think about and care about that comes from the late 80s, early 90s, all through the 90s, and then all through last decade indie rock scene. And that's what shapes what they think is cool in music. And that carries over, that permeates the cultural ethos of the electronic music scene. So maybe it's not actually misogyny. I guess that's all. All right.